All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Rise Ebony Nation, the podcast where Black and Pan African innovators share the blueprints behind their journeys. I'm your host, Taryell Simmons, and today's episode is going to shake your mind, literally. What if I told you that rewiring your brain for success isn't just possible, it's essential? Today, we're joined by the soul mechanic himself, Ryan Koriya. Are you in Zimbabwe, London? I have no idea where you are right now because every time I try to catch up with this brother, he's somewhere. So from Zimbabwe to London, from stage to the coaching room, Ryan has transformed lives through holistic life coaching, integrative hypnosis, and authentic branding. He is on a mission to heal generational trauma, amplify mental resilience, and empower entrepreneurs and people to thrive with intention. Ryan, welcome to the show, brother. Before we get into the tools and transformation that you're known, me and you were having a conversation in the green room, and I'll catch people up to that conversation um, after I get a little bit of history on you. But I want to take us back. What was life like for you growing up, and what led you into this world of holistic coaching and neuroplasticity?
Amazing. I love this. I'm so pumped. I'm ready to go. I'm just so glad we're talking. So thank you for having me, man. It's taken us only like 11 months, but
I
good
know,
thing,
right?
good time. Yeah. So because we were introduced by someone, a mutual friend who I met in Vegas last summer. I was
Hmm.
at a hypnosis conference, and currently now, as you said, it happens all the time. My friend's like, dude, where are you at now? So I'm currently in the Canary Islands, which is part of
Okay.
Spain. So
All
it's
right.
actually these islands just off the coast of Morocco, like Northwest Africa.
Nice.
And I'm on an island called Tenerife. So that's basically where I'm going to base myself. I got here 2 weeks ago, never been,
Uh-huh.
and I was setting up shop, and I'll be based here for a while. And I was in
Okay.
Zimbabwe for 5 months at the beginning of this year. So I did get around spent 3 months in Poland before this as well. A week in Ibiza in Spain, which is my old home.
See, ladies and gentlemen, I told you he was a world traveler. Every time I have a conversation with him, he's in another space, someplace on this wonderful planet.
Yeah, and it's funny because your question, right? The juxtaposition is what was my childhood like? So I'm born and raised Zimbabwean, which I think
Uh-huh.
is, sometimes, do you ever wake up and you kind of go, the country I come from sounds so weird. Zimbabwe. Like, what? Like it's the most randomest thing for someone else, but it's 100% who I am, my identity. I was just thinking about that the other day. Last country in the alphabet too, like Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
Z, as we say. So my childhood, everything grew up in this amazing country. So it's a small country, it's just above South Africa. And
Okay.
we're flanked by Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, and also, why have I got one out? I've left something out, Mozambique. So we got like Southern African um, landlocked country, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I would say growing up we were pretty isolated in a way of like sheltered.
Hmm.
We were very much a conservative kind of Christian based country. I grew up
Yeah.
Muslim, so there is that mix, right? And then even that's part of my identity. Like it's very important. It comes up in conversations a lot. Like I'm a mixed race man, but like a lot of people don't see that because they're looking for Obama or Trevor
Yeah.
Noah. And so
Hmm.
that's an interesting conversation that comes up. And it's a bit from my upbringing because there was a lot of like identity crisis because you just don't look like some of your cousins, but you don't look fully like other people who got called mixed race. And so Zimbabwe it was a trippy experience, that's what I'll say. It was like
Yeah.
different, sheltered in a way, but also um, a hangover of a 15-year long civil war called the Rhodesian War because basically a bit
Hmm.
of context, Rhodesia used to be the name of Zimbabwe until 1980. And then 1980, we became a sovereign nation, free of British colonial rule, basically. And Bob Marley famously wrote the song Zimbabwe, and he came in 1980, played this amazing concert on Independence Day, and he was a
Yeah.
legend. He like paid for the whole thing, brought his guys down, Stevie Wonder, right? Master Blaster. Today the
Nice.
peace has come to Zimbabwe. So people were happy. They were excited. That's what I grew up in, and then my teenage years started to crumble, unfortunately, with like a lot of, socio-political issues. But like,
Hmm.
just to give you like an overall picture, Zimbabwe was like idyllic. It's like a piece of
Yeah.
paradise, culture, family values, hanging out with your friends, and the currency was quite strong, when I was younger, and so it's who I am, man. Like it's the soil I come
Hmm.
from. So when you see me here like this, I'm a product of my people. I'm a product
Yeah.
of my upbringing. So I'd say that's what I would say to Dice. So yeah, describe my upbringing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see that when you passionately tell the story of, especially every time I meet with different folks in the continent, that happiness and that song and that dance is always
Hmm.
prevalent to me in the joy of the culture of different spots in the continent. I'm also thinking too, because when I talk to you, I feel sometimes, even though as a youth you grew up in Zimbabwe, I think sometimes you have a global story to you as well too, because you've traveled so much as well. Um, and I'm interested in from your global story from Zimbabwe to UK, what parts of that journey shaped your values today, and how you got into like this journey of becoming the soul mechanic.
Totally, man. Like blew my mind. Didn't see it coming, to be honest. Like, so Zimbabwe was until the age of 23. And
Hmm.
funny enough, the teenage years were pretty tough. That's when things got a lot harder financially, economically. So I didn't have a lot of options when it came to my career, right? And so when I left school, I was luckily headhunted straight away to teach music.
Yeah.
And that's because I found my passion. So for me, music was like my thing. I
Hmm.
got awards. I was already classically trained, violin, cello, and that's all from the school I went to, which was a government school. So we're not talking privatized, we're not talking expensive, we're talking accessible to families like mine. But because of the
Hmm.
inheritance of 100 years of tradition, there were all these things I could have just with the normal fees. So that's kind of how I left school. I was like, okay, what do I do now? I can't afford a university or college. And I wanted to be a pilot 100%. Man, I love planes. I love flying. I was getting geared up for that. That was my chosen career. I'm going to be a
Hmm.
pilot. So now that's interesting because I look back and I go, dude, isn't it interesting how somehow my soul knew I'm going to see the world? I want to see the world.
Hmm.
And I thought I was going to be doing it by flying planes. But when that
Hmm.
wasn't available to me, I got yanked into teaching music and which worked out pretty well. And I was very good at it for those 4 years that I was in Zimbabwe trying to get out, trying to get a visa, because that's the other thing people forget about, right? Like when you come from a country like Zimbabwe, you don't just get on a plane. You need papers, you need visas, you need, bank accounts to show that you can fend for yourself. So I didn't have any of that. So it took me that long to eventually get
Hmm.
paperwork to get to London, right? So
Yeah.
once that started, I'd already failed at trying to get a scholarship, for flying. Unfortunately, 9/11 happened around that time, so it got a lot harder to get into
Hmm.
flying, right? Things changed in the industry and the world in itself, in terms of the atmosphere with aviation. So I was like, hey, music. I get up and I can
Yeah.
just play. So that's what kind of, took my interest. So I went to London and I just started playing straight away, had a rock band, and I spent a good 7 years in the UK, like really doing the rock band scene around London, Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and just getting my hands dirty. Because the other thing I think is important is like my mindset, because that's a lot of what we talk about in terms of entrepreneurship. It's like, what's your mindset? So my
Yeah.
mindset was, hey, I got my ass kicked growing up in Africa. It was good, but it also didn't give me the opportunities some of my friends had. I finally get out to the UK, right? So let's use this opportunity, not like
Hmm.
sitting in an office doing the 95. I tried that and I just
Yeah.
realized this is not going to cut it for me. I need to be out there, cutting my teeth, getting the experience of what it is I want to do. So I left my day job and I started playing on the streets in London, the train stations, the tubes, and I had the craziest things happen, man. Like I remember one day early on, I bumped into. I didn't know him. I didn't know what he looked like, but there's a guy called Desmond Child, and he's a songwriter out of Nashville, and he's like penned some of the most famous songs, like from "Living La Vida Loca" by Ricky Martin to like "Living on a Prayer" by Bon Jovi. And the guy decided for one day, I'm going to try out the tube, the underground. Let me go and see what's going on, the public transport. And then I'm on a train because I've just been playing busking. So I got my guitar. It's busy Friday nights, and I'm air drumming because I got my headphones on. And I still remember that day, dude. Radiohead. I love Radiohead. And I'm like, and then this guy points at me and said, "Look at this kid." So I was like, "Dude, Radiohead is legit." And he was like, "Man, I write songs." I was like, "No way." Tell me, what do you do? He goes, "Don't worry about me, kiddo. What do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I play cello, I write songs." And he was like, "You know what? Do you want to play with me on my showcase on Tuesday? Like, I'm going to do a little showcase. You come play cello." And I was like, "Let's do it." And I didn't know who the guy actually was. So that's
Uh,
kind of what was cool about, as I say, versus being in an office. When you're out on the field, man, like that's where you make the magic happen. So that was my
man.
way of thinking. I was like, that was my strategy. I was like, I'm in London. That's an opportunity a lot of people don't have. I'm going to use it. So when I got my passport 7 years later, I was like,
Uh,
let's go. I've heard about Amsterdam. I've heard about Copenhagen, Denmark. I've heard about Australia. Like, there are all these places where I can go with my guitar. And I used to just pick up and just leave. And like, one of the craziest examples is Australia. First time I was always
yeah.
wanted to go there, right? So I arrived with £200. That was it. And I was there for 3 months, and I was like, I'll figure it out. And I was even a little scared. Those TV shows like Border
Man.
Patrol, right? So I was like, man, if they ask me how much money you got, mate? And I was like, $200. And they'd be like, so you sure you're not gonna come and work in our country? I'm like, no, no, no. I'm here on holiday with $200. Get home. So I was like,
Uh,
who knows? But I did it. It worked out. And I was going to a friend's wedding, so they managed to like host me for a while. I stayed with my uncle and my cousin. Like I figured it out. But then I actually did some busking. I got to some places where it's actually legal. You can just show up and you can play on the streets, and that's when I learned. As long as I got my voice and my guitar and I got some people around me, we can make stuff happen. Because let's be honest, right?
nice.
I'm the product. I provide a service which is an emotional transference or healing, and the
Man.
customers are the people around you.
Nice.
Yeah, so
I,
that's
I love
basically
that.
how it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love, what I love about your story too, that you were open to the transformation yourself, right? You didn't say, "Oh, this is the only path that I can take." You were, because I think sometimes people have goals and they get so fixated on the goals that they don't leave themselves open to
Mhm.
the experience of whatever life is trying to show you or guide you or allow you to pivot, right, in such a way. And so that's what I love so much about your story. And I'm curious to know, when was that aha moment that, hey, this voice that I have and this service that I provide, because I am the service, started to uh you know pop glimpse of lights that, there's something here that is for the soul of people, and maybe I should get certified in whole as a holistic life coach, and do some integrative hypnosis change in there as well, because I could use my voice and these other tools as an instrument to change
Yeah,
people. Like, where did that aha moment happen?
dude. Like your questions are so cool because you take me to like very unique places in my my story, and what comes to me already immediately is that there's like two sides to it, right? So I remember after all this traveling, right? What happens
Uh-huh.
is, we say it all the time, right? Like travel is the one thing you're going to spend money on that's going to make you
Yeah.
richer. Because when I'm the one who's always changing, meaning I'm always the constant. Like I was, Australia, right,
Mhm.
Denmark. You start to have conversations with people, and you start to see a reflection of who you really are. Because now it's not just your hood, it's not your people, it's not your culture, it's not just
Mhm.
one other country. It's like things kept popping up, and what kept popping up for me was like, oh man, I keep having conversations with people, and what keeps coming back is they're like, bro, you deep, like I just had a conversation with you, and what you just said to me hit so hard. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna do that thing I've been afraid to do, or that thing you told me like 5 years ago. I teach my kids that thing now. Like you're just
Mm.
someone who has this like old soul vibe, So it started to come to me like by people just interacting, saying, "Man, you go deep. You don't just have lights, but you see me. You really are able to go into someone somehow and bring out their DNA and like do a little surgery and then hand it back to them, like on an energetic level." And that's how the soul mechanic came as a name. It was just a conversation with a friend. She was like, "Man, you're like a soul mechanic." And I was like, I like that. I like that. And then I was like, and I played with that for a while, but only a few years later, when I realized what it was. So it starts with Tony Robbins, right? So Tony Robbins was one of the first people
Mhm.
when I met. I was like, man, this guy is legit. Like what he does. There's a one video, especially that blew my mind. I don't know if you've seen it. It's old video,
Yeah.
um, where there's a guy, and this guy's like a African American, good looking, like sharp dude with a wife and a kid, but he has a bad stutter, and I think he's like 30 years old. And Tony Robbins cured that stutter in 7 minutes.
Wow.
Dude, just Google Tony Robbins 7 minutes cure stutter. You will find the video, right? And because they went in and like, Tony sits with him and he just has a conversation and he's because he knows brains, right? He NLP, he's like he can see the patterns. He's like, okay, I can see what you're doing. And they find out where it comes from in his childhood, like literally we're talking early childhood, where his brain decided that was the best way to proceed in terms of keeping himself safe. And so they got rid of that programming, and the guy was like, started gone. And he came on Tony's show, and he was like, in front of thousands of people going, "I used to stutter, but now I'm ready for life. I'm ready for action. I'm pumped up." And they were like, "Yes, go, dude." This is the whole point.
Yeah.
Rashad, I still remember the guy's name. Rashad, that was his name, right?
Wow.
So that's
Yeah.
when I was like, Tony's on some stuff. Like, how does he do that? So I sort of watch a lot of his stuff, and I was like, whatever he's doing, I would so love to understand. So I got deeper in that, and then what happened is one day I I saw this video come up, and I did a masterclass with a woman. Her name is Marissa Peer. So Marissa Peer is
Hmm.
a British hypnotherapist, right? She's very well known, Mind Valley, all that stuff. And so I did a
Hmm.
masterclass, online masterclass, and because I was like, oh, I'm interested in this stuff, this hypnosis. What's that about? And that's when the haha moment. I was like, that's my thing, because she said it straight. She
Hmm.
was like, this is her words. Like, so she's like, people come to me with their clients, even therapists who've been seeing clients for 10 years will refer their clients to me. And then after half an hour session, I've healed their stuff. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that is the silver bullet. Whatever that is, this hypnosis. That's when I had my eyes set on the prize. And then, ironically, again, talking about how the world works, who I ended up studying with, and I thought it was a typo because when I got this course, offer, and I was like, I like this, I'm in. It was like between these two rock stars in hypnosis, right? This Simone Soul, and there is Melissa Tears. So
Hmm.
that's not Marissa Peer, and they both do the same thing, but one's American, like Melissa's American and Marissa's like British. So I was like, is
Hmm.
it a typo? I think it's no. Oh, it's another person. But this was the best course I've ever done, to be honest. Like it was just beautiful because it was a mixture of like coaching, hypnosis, integrated hypnosis, which also includes NLP and a bit of EFT and stuff like
Man.
that. But it also included marketing. How do you show up as a coach so you can actually market yourself and get clients? So it was a really good integration of the course. And that was basically the
Hmm.
journey. That's how I got there. It was like things, I think life's like that, man. Like when you listen, naturally things just catch your interest and you go, ooh, and you feel emotions. You're drawn to stuff and it keeps coming up. Like,
Man.
I don't know, oh, ooh, I need to check that. And if you follow that impulse, you'd be surprised where it
Mhm.
leads you, man. So that's pretty much the magical
Man.
journey. It was all just dots somehow that led me.
I know. And a lot of that has to do with your curiosity too, and always being a student, which I am too in life. So
Mhm.
that's why I recognize it in you, and I think we have this great energy and chemistry from the first time we met because we were both
Yeah.
wired in that same kind of way, which to segue back to what I was talking about earlier in the conversation when I introduced you to the interview, I told the audience I would enlighten them on our green room conversation
Mhm.
because I was like, man, I I see now how you became this person because you just naturally lean into that curiosity and wanting to learn and looking at elements holistic life. Because for 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 those who don't know, um, when I first came onto the podcast, because I was getting some back, we actually started to, let me be more transparent. We started the podcast a little bit later today. What was today? On August the It's August, right? Yeah, it's August,
17, yeah.
the 17th. And
Mhm.
I was having some back issues yesterday, and then I came I told Ryan earlier this morning, I was like, hey, listen, I got to do an emergency back appointment, get this back therapist to work out my back, and then also do some cupping. And then we were talking about it this morning, and then the first thing you asked me was like, I'd be curious, because I said the therapist said, I have a lot of toxins in my body, right? And from the cupping, it was helping to release some of those toxins. And then, what was the first thing you asked me? I'm curious to what?
Yeah, I'm just curious to know if they explained or if you've kind of looked into, the underlying reasons for those toxins coming out. Because when I look at holistic, I'm looking at like literally like the full picture, which the best way to put it, right, is like the way I see the world, which
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. It's like, when they say, hey, your mind is like what, 5 to 7, 8% conscious. And then the other
Mm-hmm.
93 to 98% is literally unconscious. You're not aware that your lungs are,
Mm-hmm.
and your heart's beating, or that you picked up. How many times have you looked for your glasses and you're like, where did I put my glasses? I have them, and they're like, you don't remember where you put them down because you were not conscious. It just happened,
Nah.
right? So with that, 90+% unconscious, that's the part that I'm interested in, because that's where all the stuff that we experience in 7% is coming
Mm-hmm.
from. So that's why I'm like, in your case, right? It's like if your back's giving you issues, then it's like, okay, so there's a 90 something percent of you that's trying to tell you something in another language about like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there's toxins in your body, but like, why are they coming there, where they're from? And that's the conversation, yeah, that I was kind of getting
Yeah.
into.
And this, he just naturally does this in conversation. So this is why it makes him just a great life coach, right? And then I went into the thought process. That's a good question. I didn't have time to get into that question with them, but what I would think is, and when I started to reflect, I was like, some of it could be stress. I know it's stress related, and some of it could be toxins from the food we eat. And I'm assuming if you were my coach, you would take me through the thought process of the stress, right?
Mhm.
And what's going on in life, that's causing the stress, and how that's manifesting in my body. Am I right in saying that? Or tell me what you would do. Let me not assume
Yeah,
that's what you would do. What
sure.
would
I
you
mean,
do?
do you know what? Like, what's so cool is even I couldn't answer that question. Like, because I'm someone who literally works in such a way that I'm so in tune to who's in front of me that there's no playbook. So what
Gotcha.
I would do is kind of what I was doing, right? I would be getting curious, because if you had said, "Hey, yeah, yeah," I asked, the person who did my back, and they actually said this, and I'd be like, "Ooh," then that would lead us into a direction, and I'd be like, "Okay, tell me
Yeah.
more about that." So that's kind of what I would have done. I would have been, to answer your question, more curious. I would have been like,
Yeah.
okay, tell me more, but in what direction it would go, I have no idea,
Uh,
because there that took us. Then I would have something to bring to the table and go, okay, let's open that door, or actually, let's go into this modality, or actually, because I think there are so many different ways to get to the same destination, because we are
yeah.
multidimensional, faceted, beings, and some people may not resonate with the words like energy or unconscious, but they may see it as, oh, I get these brain patterns, like my thoughts. I'm like, well, guess what? Thoughts are
Mhm.
energy. They create energy. So I literally swim in the seas that people are already in. Then I
Yeah.
would know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And we just started to just naturally, just from being in conversation, get there, and then because and I know that wasn't intentional. That's just who you are,
Mhm.
and I was like, and even as I'm thinking about this from an outer body experience, I was like, yeah, I started to think about my holistic being
Mhm.
of what's going on, and then we had a quick dive into, like, talking about how there's more toxins in you, like how I imagine there's more toxins even when you're trying to eat clean in the US,
Mhm.
and US food versus what would be in food in the UK. And we
Mhm.
and not to go down that rabbit hole, but we just start unpacking all these different things that could lead us to new, I guess, revelations that
Yeah,
allow for
absolutely.
us to go down the path of like what
Yeah, and one
happened.
of the big ones that I think is worth mentioning that I love to, one of the rabbit holes is, I guess you can call it metaphysical health or,
Hmm.
um, total biology, where, and I mean, I would recommend you do that, at some point. We could even do it in this call, but like when you have a symptom show up, all you
Hmm.
need to do is just go and actually research Google and go, okay, what is the metaphysical
Hmm.
reasoning behind this certain thing like back? And you can be specific as well, like which part of your back? Is it lower back? Is it upper back? Is it the
Hmm.
muscles? Is it like a spine thing? And then you will find information that goes, oh, if this is coming up in your body, that actually normally translates to the fact that A, you probably are carrying a bit too much, or there's the responsibility of
Hmm.
other people, or so there are all these things that have come up, and you normally go, oh, geez, this is so accurate right now. That's exactly what's going on in my life. And I got this thing about like the mortgage or, and then you kind of go, what? But it totally is connected. So whatever we're processing or experiencing up here
That
manifests in the rest of the system. So that's pretty interesting.
that it's funny that you say metaphysical because I've been sitting with the metaphysical spiritual world lately.
Mhm.
My upstairs neighbor, she does sound bowls, right? She does sound
Nice.
bowls,
Mhm.
sound baths,
Mhm.
and so forth. And she's been trying to get me to do one for the longest time, right?
Right. Yeah.
And maybe 2 3 weeks ago, she finally got me, and
Mhm.
for her it was intentional because Lionsgate. Are you familiar with Lionsgate? The
Oh,
the
yep.
energy
Yep.
portal.
Eight, eight.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So right now, Lionsgate is the energy portal that just she wanted me to do that sound bath so that when I did that session, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work about pulling in energies from the spirit realm, connecting the star series. I think it's series, which is considered a powerful and spiritual star with wisdom
Mm-hmm.
for the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And at the tail end of the full moon of Aquarius, which is all about expansion of the mind into the energy of oneness. And then so by her doing that during that time, it started to pull in a lot of things for me, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
started to sit with all these different energies and getting enlightened to and just kind of sitting with myself, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of information just started to flow to me through me, right? And I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting with this, I'm sitting with that,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't know what have you been sitting with during this Lions Gate, just out of curiosity.
Wow. So it's weird because I'd have to really dig for that because like when you say Lionsgate in my world and how I experienced life, like that sounds like so long ago, even though it was like literally yesterday. So I'm like, where was I at energetically? What was going on there? So what I can kind of bring in is that I am currently like 2 weeks into a new location where I'm building
Mm,
a home in a new place. So my current sort of energetics and even that full moon, which is in Aquarius, and I'm an Aquarius. So there's this
mm-hmm,
really interesting thing of like, and it really is a thing, man. Like I feel the world is starting to resemble something that I have already been living in for decades. Like the way I think, what I
mm,
was doing, right? Like the leaving my day job going, and it's like the world is being taught into self connection and self
mm-hmm.
awareness, and other people are kind
Yeah.
of waking up to it. But some of us have been living in this and discovering more and more that we need to trust this esoteric sort of energy that we were kind of trying to reject because of the community pressure. So I feel
Mm-hmm,
like that's the energy I'm in right now. It's like it's this expansion of allowing myself to not only ground here, but
mm-hmm.
also show up in at a sort of a greater capacity. Because it's kind of like,
Yeah.
the way I like to put it is kind of like let's just say I'm the color purple, right? And purple is
Mm-hmm,
always like not the cool color. And it was like, what are you doing, dude? Everyone else is green. Everyone's green. We live in a green world. And then slowly the rest of the world is starting to get closer to purple. So that's kind of how
mm-hmm.
I feel. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
we've been getting ready for this for a long time. People like myself who we already swim in the waters that other people are kind of, in all honesty, being thrown in the deep end, right? And going, what is life? This is
Yeah.
not what I studied for. This is not what I prepared. And like my second spouse just left me. That wasn't supposed to happen. Like there's a lot of just like people like us going, okay. don't worry, I got you. What you're experiencing is very normal, actually.
Hmm.
But let's look inward. I know it's scary. I've got some friends I went to school with. They don't even want to look at it. They don't want to have any self-reflection. So it's kind
Hmm.
of like a time to go, well, actually, you know what? You're not alone. Let's just gently does it. So I guess that's generally the energy I'm in. This is like
Yeah.
anticipation, but excitement, I guess. Yeah.
Like, I love that you mentioned that because when she did my sound healing the next day, she asked me the questions like, "What are you sitting
Mm,
with?" And then I'm looking at it up right now, and as I'm listening to you, and I wrote to her, what's been coming up for me during this time is mostly internal, looking inward and
mm-hmm,
taking back my power. I have often
mm-hmm,
let external situations control my time and thoughts. The answers have always been inside me. I just need to sit with myself more. I'm sitting with health, and I want to be around and thriving and feeling healthy and not become a burden to my daughter when she turns 40. I don't want to want her thinking about how she may have to change her life plans to support my health care needs. So I'm trying to reverse my health habits to take care of my mind, body, and soul. Also,
mm-hmm,
am I leaving her with enough mentally, physically, spiritually,
mm-hmm.
and does she have enough to navigate life, not in survival mode, but in abundance? Because the
That is
universe will provide.
that is awesome, man. That's amazing. And it's interesting, right? How it's not so different to what I was, sort of also calling in and feeling on my end.
And so that's why I was like it's funny to hear you say that because like the same energy that you were on, it was the same thing I
Mm-hmm,
was feeling, and you just
mm-hmm.
said everything I was feeling and trying to manifest, and I was like, oh, we this might be my truly my spiritual brother from another mother.
Yeah, here we are, man. And honestly, right, this is, to be honest, this is what's so cool. Is like that's tends to be what happens. And like look at how it happened, right? Like I'm in Vegas, dude. And like someone was like, "Hey, you should connect with Taryell. I think you guys should talk because he's doing something." And from what you said, and then we connected, we had a chat eventually. But it's like then we meet and it feels like that, right? The
Well,
energy is aligned. Like it usually looks that way. Like when something's right, it just clicks from the beginning. And usually it's someone else in the community, right? Saw that. And they're like, oh, I need to connect this wire with this wire and see what happens. And
there,
it happened in
there,
the US last year again with some of my new soul brothers, where someone said, you guys need to meet each other. And we did. And it was an amazing connection.
there. So I love it. I love it. Let me dive back a little bit because I went on a tangent there.
No, all good,
Let,
man. I'm loving all of this.
yeah, sometimes I go all over the place. I want to dive a little bit deep into challenges. Let's talk real for a second about success in this space does not come without setbacks.
Mm.
Um, what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced on this journey, whether personal, emotional, or professional?
The funny thing is, entrepreneurship it comes with a territory. That's why they say do something you love because the setbacks will hit you in the face. And when that happens, you want to have more love pulling you forwards than setbacks
Hmm.
pulling you backwards. So first one that came up for me is it's the desolates, like the desolation, man. Like it's a lonely. It can get lonely. Those are the setbacks. Is when you're
Hmm.
sitting. Let me paint you a picture. Like you're sitting wherever you are in the world, and you're looking at the time, the date, right? You're already late on payments. Your phone's been cut off. Maybe
Hmm.
you don't know if you're going to be able to pay for your room tomorrow. And you're sitting there and you're looking online and you're like, I've got like, what, 5,000 souls that are connected to me right now that I could literally recognize face to face and we know each other.
Hmm.
And I'm out here putting my dream out and I'm offering my services and I'm looking for collaborators, whatever it is, right? That's going to get me that next paycheck. And the phone is silent, man. It's silent. And so it's things like that that can be really tough.
Hmm.
However, I'm glad again because of the awareness of how the human mind works and how communities works. Like that's actually it's like, oh, it's expected. This is what's going to
Yeah.
happen because other people are in their movies, right, where they're the centerpiece and like the main characters, and even though they need your services, or even though you don't know what they're going through. Some people are like completely going through stuff right now they don't want to share, or they're holding on for dear
Hmm.
life. Some people don't support you, and that's totally fine. They're just watching to see you fall over, and that's also fine. So it's just kind of like, for me, it's that piece sometimes where it's like, man, who do I turn to? Or like, because you're supposed to. That's the other thing. It's so important, right? We probably
Yeah.
need to talk about is like, it's like community. That's the only way anything happens. Not, it's an illusion to say that we
Yeah.
do anything alone. So that's a big part of why I'm focusing on community. Especially now that I'm back in Spain, I'm building a few communities, because that's the part that can get, I think, the hardest. It's a struggle. Like sometimes it's your dream, it's not someone else's.
Hmm.
And not someone's not going to necessarily want to be there to help you build it. So you need to have as much resource as possible, and that resource sometimes is not just financial or savings or community. Sometimes it's inner resource. You got to have enough batteries to get you through those moments.
Hmm. Yeah, and I tell people that all the time until you find your community, and don't get mad if there's certain aspects of your community that doesn't support it
Mm-hmm.
because they don't understand it, and it wasn't their dream, it was yours. You've been given that vision specifically for a reason to carry that vision forward, and so sometimes everybody's not going to be able to see that vision. Doesn't
Yeah,
mean they love you any less or more. It's just that
yeah.
that's not their vision to carry on in life. That's not
And
their
that's
journey.
important as well. You bring that up is like, I think a piece on top of that is sometimes there are some people in the community who don't see the vision or don't understand it. And their natural reaction, right, knee-jerk reaction, is to try and get you out of it and talk you out of it and actually give you,
Hmm.
you know, um, so, and it has happened a couple of times, right, in the last year where you're being offered solutions that just don't even resonate, man. It's like someone trying to give
Hmm.
a fish a tennis racket and saying, dude, you shouldn't be in the water. Do professional tennis. And you're like, that doesn't even compute, right? It doesn't compute. But that's why, like you said, they don't, that's proof they don't understand. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, nothing, nothing bad about that or about them. But like you said, it's about, the key is showing up. And that's something that comes up a lot in the community as well. That I think is worth mentioning. Is another struggle is
Hmm.
people struggle to show up on social media. They struggle to show up on the panels because it's like, oh man, and there'll be whatever limiting beliefs. I kind of helped clients with that, right? Where they're stuck on the social media thing piece. But I'm like, but if you don't show up though, then how do
Yeah.
you find your community, right? That's the only way.
Yeah.
It's visibility. Like that's me meeting someone in Vegas said, hey,
Hmm.
you need to. But if I hadn't gone to Vegas, it wouldn't have happened, right? So it's the same
Yeah.
thing.
Because your community is out there, you just need to show up so that you could be connected to them. Like in our case, we got connected through a mutual person who's part of each of our communities, but our communities weren't part, like,
Yeah,
got us together because they know, like, oh, you work on this frequency and he works on this frequency, and those
yes,
frequencies should be tapped into each other, right? It
absolutely,
would make
yes.
some harmonic music together, right?
Mhm.
um and yeah, so I resonate with everything you're saying. I want to jump into more of the community talk now because
Mhm.
there's layers to this community thing, especially when it comes to the Black and African and Pan African communities. I know you speak on generational trauma. When you look at our community and then even your own experience, how has that shown up for you in your life? And then how do we start to have healthy conversations around generational trauma to get us through and moving forward and not staying stuck in generational trauma?
Yeah, oof, big question, man. Like such an important one for sure. Like I feel like, especially in our, communities where, first of all, it's like generational trauma is like a myth.
Yeah.
It's like, and you can't blame people from our community, right? Because for them, they're coming from a world where like there's no space, there's no option. What do you? That's a privilege. That's why often you say that's a white man's problem. It's mental health. What the hell? Get out of here. Therapy? I don't have time for no therapy, right? So it's like
Yeah.
it's that whole conversation of being so deep in the I'm gonna say like the well, right? That there like getting out of it is not even doesn't compute. Like it's like the well is where you live. Like it's down there, it's dark, it's dirty, and you got to just get on with it. So when we're coming from that space, it's very difficult to open up opportunity for healing. Right? It's kind of like
Hmm.
if you're not going to necessarily I guess, admits to the fact that there's certain things that maybe weren't great and we need to look at them. And I think that's the biggest piece, by the way. It's like, even in my community, when I have these conversations, the line that usually comes up is like, hey, which is great because it's positive, right? It's like, it's optimistic, but like optimism can also be, unfortunately, an unhealthy optimism, like, like an avoidance. But it's like, hey, that was in the
Mm-hmm.
past. We did what we got to do. You're not dead, right? We did our job, like as a community or whatever it is. So just don't look back, don't live in the past, move forward. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, the irony is it's like someone saying, hey, I get it. When you were a kid, you broke your leg in two pieces. And we just had to get on with it. So there was no hospital, there
Yeah.
was no thing. Your leg just, it's still like this now, but just don't worry about it. Like, don't look back. Whereas actually, what we should do is go, how do we heal this leg so that we can
Mm-hmm.
get it realigned and so that it can actually be walkable again? But because I've been hobbling for my entire life since I was 3 years old on this like
Yeah.
broken crooked leg. So that's an emotional analogy. Emotionally, that's exactly what's happening inside someone's psyche.
Yeah, I also think that requires some internal rewiring. So like how do you get people to uh do the work that they need to do to get that internal rewiring redone, because me and you have both done that in our lives,
Mhm.
like, so like I'm curious, what internal rewiring did you have to do before you could even help others to get to that point? So like I think some components that you'll share in
Yeah.
there could maybe give some nuggets that people can look at how they do their own internal rewiring so they can even start that
Yes.
process.
Hmm. You know what? What came for me is when I think about it, I feel like step number one for anyone who's listening anywhere is unshaming. That's it. Step number one. Because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of shame that comes naturally for most communities, right? About stuff that you maybe you're not proud of, in terms of you wish maybe you were stronger as a kid to, stand up to your caregivers, or the abuse that happened that you could do something. So there's a lot of shame, and then it gets buried. It's like, oh, I don't want to look at that shame. But I feel like when you start to go, okay, what am I? Even that right now, right? Let's just ask that out there. It's like, if you were to stop and ask yourself honestly, and you think about
Mm-hmm.
your past and your childhood, or even just now, what do you feel shame about? Like, and be honest with
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and like let it just sit for a while, let it percolate. Maybe it'll hit you in half an hour, but you'll be like, oh my gosh, I do feel ashamed about that one time when that thing happened, or I was abused, or I did the abusing, and I was, emotionally really rough on the kids. Whatever it is, let's just sit with that and go, now that we found it, number two, for me, big deal, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's actually wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Because one of my biggest things is like what generational trauma actually is, in my opinion, there's lots of ways to look at it, is like it's an emotional, psychological wound, right? That happens. Why did it happen? Because of something that happened to you. It's not your fault. Something happened to you, your situation, whatever it was. And so
Mm-hmm.
you generated this wound as a response, and that's good. It means you're working as a human being. So those things
Yeah.
that happen, that's actually great. It's not your fault. You actually reacted the way you're supposed to react. But now it's time to actually let it heal. And so I think that
Mm-hmm.
would be the first thing. What are you ashamed of? And then can you give yourself compassion and say, actually, you did a great job. And that's what I want to do with my, parents' generation and beyond, is to say, hey, you guys are superheroes. Like, look at what you've raised, right? Because unfortunately,
Yeah.
when our conversation comes up, there's that sort of, again, I know what it is. That it can be shame, it can be frustration, it can be blame. They feel victimized. And that's also a sign of trauma, unfortunately. Because if you were not traumatized, you'd be like, okay, cool, let's talk more about that. What do you mean? Like, oh, this could have been, okay, cool. There would be no big reaction. The big reaction basically
Mm-hmm.
represents or shows that the trauma is there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So unpacking that shame and healing from that shame. I love that. That's a good first step. Um, um, Now you're working in spaces where you're doing hypnosis and NLP. Those things aren't always familiar in the Black community. How do you
Mhm.
navigate skepticism and gain trust?
So, it depends on who I'm speaking to as to the words I use. Because in hypnosis, I don't use it very often. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because it depends on who I'm talking to. Because some people, I mean, it happened in Nashville last summer. I was at a party and I was speaking to them. They're like, "What do you do about hypnosis?" And one of the gentlemen there was like, "Dude, I don't believe in hypnosis." And then we had an interesting conversation. I said, "Why?" And often hypnosis tends to be because they've seen someone clucking like a chicken, or they feel like, someone's going to put me, to sleep, and then they're going to make me do things I don't want to do. So I kind of have
Yeah.
to educate around that, because the integrative hypnosis I work with, you're awake the whole time. You're sitting up in a chair and we're having a conversation. So
Hmm.
it's fun. So the way I do it is, again, I get curious. I just like to chat with people, and if they've got certain questions, I can talk more to that, and then I can talk, because I like to talk from a personalized sort of way, as I
Hmm.
said earlier, right? I got to get to know how someone works, what's their vocabulary, and if they're horse riders, I'll talk in horse language. If they're, but I know that it's hypnosis scientifically. That's the neuroscience side of it. But
Hmm.
they don't, NLP. That's all neuroscience and you know um, psychology and
Yeah.
science. And so a lot of people find that boring. So I'm like, no, let's use cool words like rewiring your brain, software programs. Sometimes I say I'm a human operating system, engineer,
Mm.
because that's what I do. I literally rewire people's operating systems. So the
And
language
that's why you're
shifts.
the mechanic. That's why you're the mechanic.
Yeah,
And you got a mechanic with engineering background and
there
with
you go.
all the
That's
other
it. Yeah,
elements.
yeah,
You
yeah.
really
And
chose the
actually,
perfect name.
that's true. Actually, because even that, right, in my culture, it's very common for people to be mechanical engineers. Like most people are like mechanics, right? They know how to do up cars, fix cars. And like I was like really crap at that stuff. Like as a kid, I didn't really get shown how to do that kind of thing. Never owned a car, so I'm like one of those. I'm like, okay, mixed race guys, or as we say, colored guys, is a different meaning back in Southern Africa, are usually good with cars and engines. And I'm like, I'm actually a mechanic, but put a human being in front of me, then we're talking. So and I kind of feel
Mm.
like that's pretty cool, because like a human being's a lot more complex when it comes to
Yeah.
a car engine. And so yeah, totally, like mechanics, all sorts of words that people could just recognize and get curious about enough to have a conversation about.
Yeah, because I know every time I get into conversation with you, I was like, kind of is working out this way right now. I'm always hypnotized and captivated in our conversations. So this could be a perfect example of that, but in a more controlled environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, now let's shift gears to the wins for a second. No pun intended to all the mechanic talk we just did.
Nice.
uh, you you've helped people navigate trauma, shift mindsets, and show up in their full power. What are some strategies that you found to be most effective in your work?
Okay, so the strategy I feel is very much the same. Like one of the things is when I meet people, I'm just curious. I love meeting people. So there is a very clear line between someone that is just I'm having a conversation with and someone who's a client.
Yeah,
Right. So what's cool about that is, as I said before, I got trained up and stuff. Like I was naturally that guy. Like so, I'm always going to go deep. I always love having conversations with people. But when it comes to like getting actual work done and having sessions, then it's important that the person actually wants to change and they actually want the help. So
mm,
that's one of my important strategies. Like, hey, does this person want to be helped and do they want to work on this stuff? Because what I love about hypnosis, which a lot of people don't realize, is like the person's driving the whole time. Like it's like you're in the back seat of someone's mind and you're just suggesting to go, hey, you tell me where do you want to go and how's your driving style? Oh, okay, cool. And then you can be like, you know what?
yeah,
You always wanted to change and heal, and you keep skipping the exit of the freeway, but you just went past the exit, and they're like, no, we don't go down there, and there's the trauma, right, or whatever it is. And I'll be like, okay, and then I got to find a way to gently um, show them or reframe, as we say, like when you just look at a different angle from the camera and go, oh, that road was scary for a while, but when I look now, there's nothing scary about it. And then they are okay with driving down the exit. And then guess what happens? Often they
mm,
find solutions, they find healing. So the strategy is very much patience, understanding, compassion, and just letting them drive and just being a supportive co pilot.
love that. Now, you gave me a really good example with Tony Robbins earlier today. Can you walk a straw moment or a client breakthrough that really stuck with you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. There's so many interesting ones that happen. There's there's one like I'll give you a couple. So the first one is like one of my first, clients. She was like mid 60s, and
Hmm.
she was about to go and get a hip replacement operation. And we were chatting, and she was talking about it. She was like, "Oh man, like because we'd done a course together a few years back,
Hmm.
so we knew each other." And she was like, "Man, I'm not sleeping very well. I'm literally like crippled with fear." Those were her words, because she was like, "I'm scared of hospitals, and I'm going into hospital next week. I can't sleep, but I can't even walk down to my gate because she has horses, right? So, but I can't even walk down to my gate to meet the horses because I'm like my 92-year-old neighbor can walk farther than I can right now. It sucks." And so I said, "Hey, just out of curiosity, how do you feel about a hypnosis session? Maybe we can see what happens." And she was like, "Hey, I'm ready to try anything now because it's really painful." So I'm like, "Let's go." So in the session, um, which is a good 45 minutes, 15 minutes of chatting and stuff. What is so cool is, again, a great idea to show you how I just guide, right? So I asked her, because she chose, right? She has deep anxiety and fear, right? And just pain. So I said, what would
Hmm.
she like to feel? So she's like, "I'd love to just feel excited, or at least look forward to, because that's much easier, much better." So I'm like, "That's fine." So we had a session, as I said, it's talking. We go through the process of visualization, and it's like surgically rewiring your brain, but in real time without putting you to sleep, right? It's a really
Mm.
interesting process. So we rewired her thought process to go, actually, she's going to a hospital, which she's scared of, right? And I was like,
Mhm.
well, that's interesting, because a hospital is kind of like a hotel. You're going in,
Mhm.
you're going to have food, they're going to bring you food whenever you need it. And then you're coming out as Superwoman, basically, with like bionic hip, Then guess what? When you come out, you can actually do the things you love, which is ride your horses and drive your van across Europe, which is what she wanted to do. And so we rewired that process into her
Mhm.
thinking. And a couple of days later, she messaged me just like, "Dude, I don't know what you did, but it seems to be working." And I was like, "Why?" She's like, "I haven't used any of my anti-anxiety tools you gave me." Because I gave people tools like, when you start getting anxious, do this, do some EFT tapping or whatever. She didn't use it. She was
Mm.
like, "Dude, I'm cool, I'm calm, like a cucumber." And I was like, "Is that enough?" Because again, I was curious, right? I'm not making assumptions. Like, tell me more. So, were you expecting to be more, what, more? She was like, "Yeah, dude, the date's coming closer. I would be even more stressed right now, but I'm rolling, dude. I'm chill." And she was like, "It's weird because we just kind of sat and had a conversation,
Mhm.
and it was a kind of fun conversation." Then Sunday comes, because Monday morning's the operation. She sends me a YouTube video. I'm like, "What's this?" And it's like Pointer Sisters, right? "I'm so excited." And I was like, "What's this?" She's like, "Dude, this is my soundtrack for today." And I was like, "For real?" She's like, "Dude, I'm not even kidding. Like, I am literally feeling excited for tomorrow. I'm like all packed up in my bag. I don't know what you did to me, but that shit is strong." And I'm
Wow.
like,
Wow.
hallelujah.
Love that.
But more
Like,
importantly, holistic health, right? Like, what happened after the fact is she went in.
uh-huh.
The doctor, the surgeons and stuff were also like, "Hey, what's up with you? Why are you so sure?" Because they know her, right? This wasn't usual. She's like, "Yeah, I'm ready to go." She came out. Her physiotherapist literally was like, "What's happening? You're healing a lot faster than you should be." And that's a testament to the holistic health. Like, when your
Mhm.
body's in resonance and it's not fighting itself in stress and cortisol and stuff, it gets to heal because you're feeding it the energy it needs to
Mhm.
actually rebuild. So those things
Yeah.
really do match for me.
Yeah. And that's why sometimes they give placebos in certain case studies
Yeah.
because it tricks the mind into
Hmm.
thinking that it's healing to see what your body does in its natural
Yes.
state of healing versus in its stress state. And I love that you brought and woven some of those elements of that holistic healing piece because
Mm,
if you get your mindset at the healed state in a holistic place, it makes it easier for the body to follow,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So you have to conquer sometimes what's in that mind. Man, that's a beautiful
Mm,
story. I love that. I think people listening to this episode, especially because there's a lot of a lot of energy healers, light workers out there who haven't really jumped into the entrepreneurial space in a way that you've been able to do this. And I think they're going to get inspired by your story, or people who just have that in them that they're still exploring and they're curious about, and they're not sure whether they can make this a career. And so I'm glad that you came on today, and this is right on time. And a lot of people who are going inward now because they're seeing what's
Mm-hmm.
happening in the state of the world today,
Yeah.
and they're not finding the answers that they need, so they're looking more inward. So for those who are listening, especially for our Black and Pan African listeners stepping into entrepreneurship, especially in
Mm-hmm.
around the healing work, what's the most important lesson you learned along the way that you can give to them?
Oh man, like there's so much, and like one of the most important I would say is like I know for a fact my own experience. Like you always kind of have the imposter syndrome thing come up, and you always kind of like have whatever the block is, right? It's like, oh man, what do my family think, or who am I? I don't have some whatever five-dimensional, degree from University of like Sirius, like whatever it is. It's like the most important thing you have to remember is like there is no other Ryan. There is no other you out there. Whoever's listening right now, I'm talking to you, right? There is no you. It happens all
Mm,
the time, but no, but there's so many people doing this kind of healing or this kind of work or this kind of like they are. But guess what's going to happen? When you show up, some people are only going to respond to you. You're going to
mm,
open up some people who no one else could get to. That's our individual gift. We're here, especially if it's calling you, because you know in your heart, you can hear it. Like, I keep getting pulled into this, and it's yourself who's running away from your calling. But when you go through that, especially as we said, when you've got the right community that allows you, because we get it. It's like you need
mm,
confidence first, and you need some support, and maybe a bit of a fragile beginning. Protect that,
mm,
protect it. Don't go to people who are going to crush your spirit. Go to the people who are going to
mm,
say, I get you, I see you, and like grow along with them because when you show up, you're going to literally help people who are still going to be waiting years from now because you didn't show up. Because everyone's different, right? Like even for me, right? I know that, and another example I'll give, that, and the great thing is the proof comes over and over again. I
mm,
was in a community of like nearly 400 women when I studied hypnosis. And one of the women came up and she said, "Hey, my partner and I, my boyfriend and I are struggling. We need a relationship coach to see whether this is a make or break. This is it." And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to help out." And a few other lady coaches offered. So my brain went to, and that's normal, right? I'm sure other people listening would do the same. My brain went
mm,
to, oh, she's probably going to choose one of the women because that's usually how it works. Like it's like, oh, there's a guy in the room, but they feel safer with the women. So I was like, but I'm going to show up. I could have just said, nah, I'm going to leave it, but I did it. And she replied, and she was like, "Thank you for that. I would love that. Can we get on a call with my boyfriend?" I was like, "Absolutely." And I was, oh, pleasantly surprised. Had a call, knowing that she's talking to other coaches too, right? They're trying everybody out. And I did some sessions with them. And she actually said, she was like, Ryan, as a woman, I've always been suspicious of men because of my experiences in life. And you are the first man that I just felt a yes. I was like, yeah, I think this is a yes from you. And her partner
mm,
said the same. As a man, he was like, working with Ryan just felt different. I haven't been exposed to this kind of masculine energy before. That I just felt safe and
mm,
non-judged. And so that's just an example of what I'm saying. That I've learned that by Ryan showing up, I tend to go into spaces that a lot of other men or people don't go into. But that's because of the work I've
mm,
done. Right? I've realized with my own self that when I get into peace with my own body, I'm not at war with myself. And people can sense that. So they're like, man, I feel cool around you. I feel safe. I feel calm. I like nice to hear from you. I hear that every day, like on my voice notes. So I'm like, that's who I am. So whoever you are, you know you have your superpowers. Everybody has them. What are those? So I would actually say
yeah,
for your assignment, please write those down. Go after this,
yeah.
watching this, write down your superpowers. There are things that people say to you nearly every day that they love. Write that down because that's going to draw in people, especially for you, and that you're here to help.
I love that. I'm resonating with a lot of the stuff that you talk about, just being in one and self, and
Mhm.
even showing up differently in masculine energy to show how healed masculine energy can show up
Mhm.
in the space and provide, these spaces for these safe spaces for these conversations, right? Because we tend, I think everybody tends to have a little bias that that women will better provide these spaces, when it comes to this nurturing and conversations around, especially when it comes to relationships, like what you
Yeah.
just spoke to. But
Yeah.
I'm loving that example and different. And I'm also sitting with too because and this is a struggle that I see when it comes
Hmm.
to people in entrepreneurship specifically.
Hmm.
The struggle, like I could be good in me as myself and mentally well and healthy, but me
Hmm.
mentally well in business is a different thing. And I think you talk a little bit about mental wellness in business.
Hmm.
And one, how do you help people achieve that mental wellness in business? And why do you think that's like a non-negotiable today?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like it's a good thing to bring up because so my holistic coaching, even that is like interesting as an example, right? Like I break rules in a sense because the world is changing, and we all know a lot of the rules that we live by just don't work. It's obvious. So one of the rules that I'm very blatant at breaking is this thing of like stay in your lane, focus on one thing, and I'm like, as a human being, I'm an ecosystem. That's
Mm,
why I can help people the way I can. Because can you imagine being a forest for someone, not a tree or a plant, right? They go into the forest and they go, oh man, I've got like issues at home. I'm struggling with my mental health and my relationship's also kind of struggling. My business is good though. But it's like they're all connected. So under one roof, I can go, okay, you're struggling with your business. Your business is good, but you're struggling with your emotion. And I kind of show them it's the same thing. Yeah, it's just a relationship between you and your spouse or your partner, or it's a relationship between your clients. And then when that happens, they usually go, "Oh, geez, I had a block." To kind of like, I was just kidding on myself, really. I was kind of bluffing, but it's like, no, like Taryell at home is Taryell at work. It's the same human being. So whatever you're struggling with is often just a reflection of a belief system you've got. Good example for myself, right? When I
mm-hmm,
was growing up, I was a musician, and like I had that happen. Like I finished school when I was like headhunted, right, to teach music, but like
mm-hmm,
uh, on a cultural level, it wasn't taken seriously as a career. So there was this thing of like music. Come on, this is not a real job. Get a real job, man. Like what is this? So
mm-hmm,
of course, a part of me felt, oh my gosh, this is not going to ever make me money, and I'm never going to make it because it was something that gave to me. But then in other areas, I would be abundant. So that's what I
mm,
would say is like when you look at your business, again, just get curious. What inner belief do you have that somehow makes you think it's different to anything else in your life in terms of the relationship
mm-hmm.
between you and that part of you?
Yeah, I love that. Because sometimes it's just the belief system that we have to it that's blocking the blessing that it could be to provide
Yeah.
what we needed to provide. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's a big one. So it could be so many different areas, right? Because sometimes it's about receiving, sometimes it's about charging for your worth, sometimes it's about going, hey, actually, the business side of things, you actually hate it. Like, so of course, your energy is not really abundant because you're like, I hate this job, or I know
Mm,
I'm doing it, but I'm doing it for a different reason, or it's because it's the degree I had. So I've got to use the degree. There's so many things that the software, there's lines of code that we can go in there. Once we identify what it is, then we can rewrite it. So that's what I love about the
mm.
job with the hypnosis. It's like finding the right code that needs to be addressed and then rewiring it so that it supports you and your ecosystem.
I love that. Love that. Man, so much good wisdom and nuggets in today's conversation. Ryan, I could talk to you all day. I'm looking at the time, I was like, man, that where did that hour go? Like it went by
Yeah.
so fast for me. But you giving us so much wisdom today, from the science of rewiring the brain to finding that code and putting a new code in so that it can really work from a mindset of abundance, and then also the soul of showing up with intention, right?
Mm.
And just being uh, that forest of connected to so many different resources, and how do we tap into that? Want to end off on, where can folks go to learn more about you, work with you, or follow your journey? What, like, give the folks something, and then any last parting words of wisdom.
Sure, no worries. Like it's been super cool, man. I'm glad we finally got to do this, and I'm obviously sort of excited to see where else. both our journeys go, and
You'll
anyone
be
who's
both, brother. You'll
listening,
be both.
absolutely. Anyone who's listening, we appreciate you for just spending time with us, because even that's a high commodity these days, man. People's time and energy. So we hope that our conversation has brought you some value. And one last nugget that I would leave really is, um, I guess it's to do with the fact that the world we live in right now, there's no sort of like denying that it's changing faster than it's ever changed. Like then I'll say something about like every 4 years we go through 100 years of development. That's
Mhm.
nuts. And we're seeing it, right? AI, technology, jobs are like going like out the window, but more jobs being created. So one of my pieces of advice would be like, when it comes to how things work right now, one of the best things you can do, I would say, is focus on inner skills, focus on your value. What are you interested in, and what are you here to give? Because even literally, like it was a month ago with the just 3 day intensive I did with Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi, and I love what they said, because they've bought mastermind.com and they're building courses, and they're allowing people like me and whoever to go and host our courses, because they're literally saying, guys, the coaching business is going to be $1 trillion business in the next couple of years, because we're at a
Mhm.
time where so many people are lost, or they want to pivot, or they're not doing okay, and the answer does not lie in a university course or going to something professional, like whatever it is, like that people would used to do like 50 years ago. Now it's about, there's a human being out there who's done the thing that I want to do, who I can pay one on one to help me get there faster. Like, Taryell's there. He's built a podcast. He knows how the entrepreneurs work. So if I just say, hey, dude, can I pay you for an hour of your time as a consultant to just help me set up my business and save me 2 years of ache? That's the world we're going in. So that's my advice. It's like, choose something that you know you're good at, that you love, and just give it some love and nurture it, because we're going to a future where the jobs are so sporadic and erratic that people need help, and you're going to definitely be one of the
Mhm.
people that can help them with whatever it is you do.
Yeah, love that, love that. And where can people learn more about you, work with you, and follow your journey?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I'm on Instagram. I spend a lot of time there. I also got a Facebook. My website's also ryankoriya.com, and the Instagram's at Ryan Koriya. And yeah, I'd love to say that the kind of work I also love, especially, is relationship and intimacy work, because I think that's a good place to be, where we resource people in their relationships, and like in the bedroom, that literally is like a seed that just flowers the rest of the ecosystem. Like if you're doing well in the bedroom and at home, then your business tends to do well as well. And that's like also, figures that sort of suggest that. And also, I love doing VIP coaching. So there are a lot of people who are like successful. They've got the money, right? But they may be struggling with in the relationship department. They can't get the right partner, or they're struggling with certain inner beliefs that they've been stuck with. That's what I love. I love the
Mhm.
places where you've been stuck for a while. Like, let's get through that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Social media, I guess you guys will put it up on your side, but I'd love to hear from anyone. I'm open, and of course, let's definitely keep our conversation going as well, man.
Love that, love that. So you know where to find them. We're gonna put, if you're driving, don't worry. We're gonna put the show notes in the link at the bottom, so that you can connect with Ryan. If this episode moved you, take a moment to share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe, leave a review, and follow us for more powerful conversations from Black and Pan African change makers all over the globe. Next week, we're going to be diving into the intersection of tech and culture with a new guest who's really shaking up Silicon Valley. So stay tuned, family, and keep rising. Peace.
Nice. Peace.